If you were a kid when you were growing up, you were very nosy and very inquisitive and always wanting to know what was going on, you would be a good planner.
Hi guys, welcome to the Weddings Exposed podcast, the first podcast for the brides and for the wedding industry professionals.
We are Alexa Geibel and Kirill Brusilovsky, fine art wedding photographers from North Germany.
In our podcast, we are going to give many tips for the brides how to organize your dream wedding.
Our idea is to bring wedding industry professionals and wedding clients closer together and make them understand each other better.
We want to share experiences and learn from each other.
And now, let's rock and roll.
Hi guys, welcome to the Weddings Exposed. Today we have a very interesting guest. Her name is Irene Tyndale. She's an event and wedding planner from Atlanta, Georgia. We're super excited. Welcome, Irene.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, very welcome.
Hello, Irene.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your company, about your wedding planning business.
Sure. So I've been in wedding and events for about 23 years. I started in college. Yeah, I started in college. And it's funny because anytime someone comes to me and says that they want to do this for a living, I say to them, could you do it for free? And they look at me and I said, I did it for free for many years, not realizing that it was actually a career, something that I would eventually have a business with. So I started planning events in college, actually majored in hospitality. I did not major in hospitality. I majored in communications because at the time, hospitality colleges, it was more for like hotel management, front desk management. And I didn't want to do that. And at the time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Most people in college don't know what they want to do. And so then I became a corporate event planner for a few years, but then also on the side, did a lot of social events and nonprofit galas and fundraisers and things like that. And then about 13 years ago, my husband and I moved from Florida to Atlanta for him to finish school. And I got a job at a hotel selling weddings, servicing weddings. And, that was my first real job doing weddings. And I loved it. I've been doing it for free and for friends for many years before that. And then, and it was only doing corporate events as a career. And then that blossomed. I worked for 3 or 4 different hotels in Atlanta. And about 7.5 years ago, I started my own business. We parted ways. The last hotel I worked for, we parted ways. And Irene Tyndale Wedding and Events started. And I've been doing it for 7.5 years now.
Yeah, so you've been doing it for free. It means that you've enjoyed doing it, actually.
Right.
And it was...
Yeah, because in the early days, when I was when you're in college, in the university, you get involved in campus activities and you get involved with other community groups that need interns or need people to come and help them do things. And for many years, I did that. I was part of different committees that put on the galas and fundraisers and conferences. And then, when we're in college, friends start getting married and I helped them with their weddings, and then I got married and I did my own wedding. And so it kind of just slowly blossomed. And after I got released from the last hotel, my husband said, I think you should start your own company. And I laughed and said, no, I'm going to go back, because it was right in November. I said, I'll go right back after the holidays. I'll have a job by February, March, the latest. And 2 of the brides that booked me at the hotel, who I booked the hotel, both have really busy careers. And the reason they booked the hotel was because I was so helpful, because not only was I a sales manager, I also serviced them and helped them and connected them with great vendors like photographers and DJs and hairstylists and all that stuff. They were like, we cannot get married without you. We're too busy. And that's how I got my first 2 clients.
Okay.
That was that.
Amazing. I guess it's just the best feeling, especially if it's your hobby. If you can do it for free, that's just the best thing. I think you're just a really lucky woman to have something like that. It's beautiful.
Right. To have something that's not, that was a hobby. That's something I was good with and didn't think it was going to be a career. And 23 years later, I am still doing what I love to do.
Are you regret that you haven't started it earlier, the wedding business, the wedding planning business? Like back in the days when you were in college, you haven't thought about doing that?
No, because I probably wouldn't be able to run the business.
Yeah.
Because as it is, when you first start in business, you don't know when I first started my business 7.5 years ago, podcasts were just starting to be a thing. Where really people were doing talk radio type blogs online. It wasn't really podcasts like that. There were not many people doing education or certifications and things like that. So I have a good group of girlfriends that we all started our business at the same time, 7.5, 8 years ago. And we all just kind of helped each other. And then we found a Facebook group, or we found somebody, we were like, hey, check this person out. And we learned. If I would have started a business when I was 22, 23, I probably would have more gray hair than I have now.
But obviously, if I got it right, you've organized your own wedding by yourself. So you've managed to do it actually without an external wedding planner. So for us, it's interesting. When actually does somebody need a wedding planner? Is it is it obvious that everybody would need one? Here in Europe, it's a bit different, especially in Germany. It is not that common, I guess, and in the United States. Perhaps you could share your thoughts on who is actually perhaps your typical client, and who is actually, what kind of persons in the United States would actually need a wedding planner, and perhaps who would not, who would like manage by themselves.
Right. Now, I will tell you this. I've been married 16 years, and I planned the entire wedding myself because, of course, I was a planner. And at that time, there were event planners and there were wedding planners, but it wasn't as popular as it is now. It was, in those times, it was like if you were affluent, if you had a certain status, if you were famous, then you had a wedding planner from start to finish. But I planned the entire wedding, and then on my wedding day, one of my really good friends managed everything for me, right? But even with all that, I still was holding on to the clipboard. I was still holding on to the timeline in my head and telling people what to do in my full bridal gown. And my husband looked at me and put his hand on my shoulder and was like, let it go, put the clipboard down, and enjoy the day. Right. And I always remember that because I honestly find myself telling my brides that now.
I think we're experiencing such things quite often, actually, when brides or couples organize the wedding there by themselves, and we as photographers are with them the whole day, and we see them like half an hour before the reception, checking things and changing places where people have to sit, and like it's quite pity to see that.
It's just pure stress, like non-stop stress, 24 hours. They just relax when they drink for the first time, then they just relax. Okay, we did it. Finally, we can relax. We can enjoy the moment. But yeah, so I guess it's everywhere is the same.
Yeah, and so here in the States, here in the United States, we have it where brides, with the internet and all the different checklists out there and Pinterest boards and different planning books, there's a lot of couples that do plan the weddings themselves. They plan it with their mom, or they plan it as a couple that together they plan it. And then we have what we call wedding management, month of coordination, where people come in we come in the last 6 to 8 weeks before the wedding, and we basically wrap up everything that the bride and the groom and the parents have planned, and we put a bow on it and we execute it that day. So that's really popular here. But for us, we've struggled for years with the ideal client, because as you all know, as business owners in this industry, we've gone to many workshops, we've gone to conferences, and we watch and we read, and to me, it's like, yes, your ideal bride might shop in a certain place, might drive a certain car, might make a certain amount of money, and those things are great. But a couple of years ago, I looked at the weddings that made me the happiest, and we realized that our ideal client at the core has a good heart. Right. So yes, we sometimes we have eclectic offbeat brides that some people like, oh, they're full of tattoos, or they just they're a little rockerish. They're a little different, but at the core there's a small foundation of traditionalism that they love about, and classic about the wedding itself. They love their family. They care about everybody and how everyone, it's not all about them. Like, they want a beautiful day, they want a beautiful experience, but they also want to open their doors and host an event that their family and friends will remember for a lifetime, right? And not remember it because she had the biggest centerpiece or the biggest gown, or he had, a 10-piece band come out. It's because they care about their people. So we realize that the people that we love working with are the ones that first and foremost were loving each other, of course, but it was about their family and their friends, because you're hosting the first party as a couple, and it's the biggest party you will ever host. Because then when I don't think, I've been married 16 years and I haven't hosted anything that big since. If I
What
won't
is
host
big in your eyes? I'm sorry, just to think about, because we've been talking to a wedding planner from Lebanon and Emirates, and they, like, for them it's like 500 people is a small wedding, and so here.
Whoa.
What is an average amount of persons from your point of view? What is a big wedding for you, and what is a smaller one?
So, on average here in the States, an average size wedding is anywhere between 130 and 150. That's average. A large wedding, it's anywhere, we consider a large wedding anywhere between 200 and 300, 350 for uh, an Americanized wedding. Now, when you get into the South Asian market, when you get into the Nigerian
Oh yeah,
market,
sure.
those weddings, even here in the States, those weddings are 350 plus. Those are larger. And we've had some of those weddings. We've had weddings where it's 550 people, 3 or 4 days worth of events. That's a large wedding. But I look at it, for most couples, they probably have never hosted anything in their house more than 30 people, 50 people. And most of my couples are like, I used to have parties when I was in college, but it was kind of like, hey, we're having a party, come. It was just
Okay.
like, you're not, it's not planning it. And even for my couples who say that we're not traditional, there's still so many traditional elements to a wedding day. Even if we shake it up, even if we change the order of things, even if you decide to get married under a waterfall versus a church, there's still some traditionalness to weddings. And so there's still a protocol, but I always try to pull out who they are, their wishes, but also the parents' wishes. Like I've had couples, I had a bride one time, great story. Her and her mother were fighting for like 30, 45 minutes over the veil, which is just a piece of, we know they wear it for what? You wear it for 30 minutes for the ceremony. And I'm writing notes because I'm hearing both of their sides. And the mom's like, what are you writing? I'm like, I'm writing what your points are and what her points are. Because somewhere in the middle, there's a middle ground. Like somewhere in the middle, there's a solution.
So you
And
have
at
to
the
be a
end
good
of,
psychologist, right?
right, right. And at the end of it, I looked at my bride, I'm like, you're wearing this piece of tulle for 20, 30 minutes. And then it comes off. She's letting you get married at a brewery. Like she's letting you get married at a place that they make beer. Like, it's like, she was
Cool.
like, oh, you're right. And the mother was like, they both kind of like just relaxed. But yes, you are so right. I am a therapist.
So what else do you have to be? What else? I guess you are striving to be a good, best wedding planner. What are the components of that? Obviously, what are your own demands to yourself?
First and foremost, I always say that you have to be a servant. Like you have to be a person that likes to serve other people. You have to be selfless because it's not about you, it's about them and bringing their ideas to life and their wishes to life. You have to be a great listener because sometimes people don't know what they want or don't know how to articulate it. But when you're listening to what they're saying, you could pull things out of there. You have to be a great listener. You have to be a leader because the planner, honestly, is the director of the entire movie. Because that's what it is. I always tell my couples, you're the executive producer of your movie, meaning that you're paying for everything. That's what executive producers do. They bring the money. They just put their name on the door and bring the money. And then I'm your director, and I direct the entire cast and crew. So the crew is all the vendors, all the professionals that are helping. And your cast is your bridal party and the two of you and your families. And so as a director, you have to be able to lead all these people and lead these people well and understand all the different personalities because there's so many different personalities. I always tell my couples, do not hide anything from me. Nothing. I've been doing this for a really long time. Very few things surprise me anymore. So I need to know if there's anybody if there's any issues, if somebody is uninvited or was not invited. Like we just need to know everything. So, good listener, a leader, a servant, like being able to serve, and then just executing it flawlessly, but being really friendly and very sweet and very understanding, because it's an emotional time. And anytime we put emotions to something, and emotions with money, it's always crazy. It's no different than my corporate clients. My corporate clients go, hi, the phone rings. I have $100,000. I want to take 50 people to Chicago for a meeting or conference. Click. They like hang up. Brides are like, well, you know, because and we
Yeah,
have to, it's like dating. You have to talk through every step, every step, every step, and then be very advised, like advise them really well and be informed. Like you have to, as a planner, you'll be well informed. I tell my team and other new planners, it is your job to know everything, not to be an expert at everything, but to know a little bit about everything, because I don't know or I didn't know is unexcusable. Like you have to know. So I tell people, if you were a kid when you were growing up, you were very nosy and very inquisitive and always wanting to know what was going on, you would be a good planner.
Do you maybe have some funny or horror stories to tell us from your weddings that you organized? Like what went wrong at some of the weddings?
Or what went perhaps so right that it could topple everything, which was better than in the movies? Or I don't know, something which is, when you hear this question, something which comes immediately to your mind.
So when I was working at one of the hotels, doing 2007. So in 2000, like 2020, everyone goes, oh, the year 2020. Everybody wanted the 1-10-10, those kind of dates on their invitation. So that year, it happened to be a July 7th, a July wedding on 2007. So 7707, like that was her thing. She paid really good money to have it. And that was I always remember that because that week, my aunt got married in New York on July 1st. And so I flew there, went to her wedding, did all that, flew back home on like the 3rd or 4th or something like that. And then got ready to go back to work for this wedding. And so I was at work on like July 5th or something like that. I can't remember what day. And I get a phone call. I'm on the phone with a client, and my boss picks up my other line and she says, oh, she's on the phone at the moment. May I help you? And the person on the other line says, I need to speak to Irene. We can't find the groom. she was like, you can't what? You can't find the groom? And I heard her say that, and I was on the phone and I told my client, it was a corporate client, I said, can I call you back? There's something going on with the wedding for Saturday. And she's like, oh, sure. So I get off the phone, I get on the other call, and it's the big sister of the bride calling me saying that what can they do because they cannot find the groom. And at this point, it's like July 5th or 6th, like 5th. So it was a couple days before. And she's like, we can't find the groom or something. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't find the groom? And she's like, we can't find him. We'll call you back, but could we pause everything? And I'm like, oh, your wedding's in a few days. It might've been the week before. It was a few days. And so a few hours later, I get a phone call back saying that he checked himself into rehab.
Ooh.
And I said, oh, but it was the next day they called me to tell me that. And his brother-in-law took him and he said, oh, I'm going to call everybody once I get in there. He never did, because they take your cell phone. They just, they take everything from you. Like you're basically admitting yourself as a prisoner, right? To get well. And so everything got postponed. And, I went to my general manager, and I was like, what can we do? And he said, well, she's going to lose the initial deposit because we had things purchased already. Like we had food. I mean, we were getting ready. So we were able to pause certain things, and she had a lump sum, and they rescheduled for September of the same year, which was fine. And so their guest count, I mean, they had people en route and everything. They were getting ready to come to Atlanta, and they couldn't. So they rescheduled it to September. It was a smaller group of people, of course. And the day before her rehearsal, I call her just to confirm. We had everything detailed, just to confirm, hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow for the rehearsal. Some of your family members have started to arrive already, because at this point it was Thursday. She's like, she said, yeah, she sounded really flustered and was like, can I call you back? Can I call you back? And I was like, okay, sure. So I hang up the phone. And I told my coworkers, I'm like, I don't think this wedding is going to happen Saturday. And they were like, stop it. I'm like, listen, the reason I do what I do is because I love love. Like, I'm a sucker for love. I love it. I want everybody to be happy. I want marriages to work. I want people to stay together. I said, but sometimes things don't always work out. And she calls me back a few hours later and tells me that he had been arrested. So he had gotten out of rehab, moved to Florida to go work and get away from the bad influences here, and got arrested for doing something to a girl that he said that didn't happen. And so, I mean, all that to say, like, the wedding didn't happen. And at this point, I was like, your wedding, I said, I can't save anything. The linens are here. The florist just called to tell me that everything was ready to go, confirming time. The cake lady, I was like, it's like all this stuff was like, it's because our packages were all inclusive. And she was like, and at that point she was of course in tears. Her mom called me and her parents are very understanding. Like, they were like, and I said, why don't you still have the party? Why don't you have a party like, thank you God for saving me from this man, and just still have the party?
It's a good.
And she, right, it would
I'm
have been.
speechless. I'm completely I'm listening.
Right, and I would have stood if I was a parent. Oh, we would have had a party. I would have been like, no, we're having a party that you're not marrying this man.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then, and I'm not lying, a year later, or like 8 months later, I get an email from this young lady and says, Miss Irene, what can I have for $3,000 or $5,000? Like, to the same person. And I couldn't even respond to the email. I had to go talk to my general manager and my chef, and I brought them together. And they looked at me and they said, even if we needed that $5,000 to make our numbers for the month, the answer is no. Because they were both married, they're older, they're like, there are so many signs pointing
That is not going to work, of course.
it's not gonna work. What are you doing? And so I said to her, and I literally in my email was like, I said, I will never forget her name, but I'm not gonna say it. I said, I am praying for you. I said, but my love, I cannot take another ounce of your money. As it is, it hurt me as a person to my core that that happened to you, that you lost $25,000, that your parents, like, between you and your parents, that's money, and you can't write that off in your
poor
taxes.
girl.
Right.
How old was she? Was she young? How old is she?
Yeah, she probably was 25, 26, maybe, if that. But old enough to know, like, how many times do you need?
Yeah, but I think love is blind, especially if you are young. Sometimes it's just affection, some kind of attraction. We're not always smart, we as women, unfortunately, especially when we're young.
Oh, come on. Men are as dumb
it's
sometimes when it comes to emotions as well.
Yeah, but I think we feel we could fix them. I think sometimes you feel like you could fix them, and
exactly. And they also, I think, you know what kind of buttons to push just to make you love, just to win you back.
Right. And I never had, I was like, this is so sad. So she's one of these people that I will never forget, because I always wonder. I mean, my bosses and I were like, she probably did marry him. But I was like, I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
That's
No,
like,
if it doesn't go with your heart, then yeah.
No, yeah. But then on the other side too, we've had some amazing weddings. And we recently, back in July, we had the honor to plan and execute and design the wedding of one of the founding members of the Commodores. And they live here, and it was amazing because there were legends in the room, and they had a beautiful last dance with confetti guns, and they performed Brick House with the band that they had hired. And it was just like, those are the moments. Like, I tell people I have more great moments in my career than I do otherwise. And a lot of times it's not the bride and the groom. Okay, people ask me all the time, do you have bridezillas? Because of course television, it shows the ugly side of things, because half the time we know that that's for TV. Like, no one is really going around acting that way. I mean, you might have a few, but they have enough to make a show. And since people are watching the show, they'll continue doing that, right? That's just what it is. So I haven't had many, since I have had my own business, I have not had bridezillas because, I mean, the honestly is when we own our own business, we choose who we want to work with, just
Of
like they
course.
choose us. When
Yeah.
I worked for the hotel, I had no choice. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't go, oh, I do not like that girl.
But to ask you frankly, so besides this girl calling you after a while, did it happen to you that somebody is actually reaching out to you, perhaps from their side, willing to engage you, and you are saying no, like something tells you that it doesn't fit somebody whom you would say no to in some case? Did
I've
it
had that.
happen?
Yeah, I've had that before. And the biggest thing I do, I tell all planners that are first getting into this or have their business, I was like, you need to do your research on couples just as much as they've done their research on you. Because it's very easy, you see our Instagram posts, you see you see us on podcasts and on videos, things like that. And they have a feeling for you already. Like they know who you are, they've looked at your work, and then they inquire. And so what we do is, part of our inquiry form, we ask them for their Pinterest boards. We also ask for their Instagram handles because we want to check them out. We want to check them out just as much as they want to check us out. We want to make sure that, who they are fits who we are because we want to be able to service people at the best possible way. The best possible way. But I've had times where I've had to tell people no because they've called and told us, they tell me the dream. I always let them talk and tell me your story. How did you meet? Tell me about the proposal. How many guests? What's your vision? What are your worries about planning on the wedding day? And then, we kind of get through all of that. And then I say, what is your budget? Because we like to know what is your overall budget. And sometimes we educate them on on the first call because they don't know.
Of
They
course.
don't know.
Why should they? I mean, you normally marry just once.
Hopefully.
Right.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, right. But sometimes too, it's like there's so much information out there that they don't read. Like, okay, so there's a couple of publications that put on surveys every year, right? But it says on average, like they literally survey 16,000 couples across the United States, bund them all together and made an average. On average, a wedding planner is $975. No, we're not. Not even a day of coordinator is that low. So I tell brides, like, you all get fixated on that number, but you don't read the whole report that's done on average. Because if you are, a small wedding in New York City, or like 50 to 75 people, could be 80 to $100,000 US dollars. $100,000 in the South, you could have an amazing wedding. Like in Georgia, you could have an amazing wedding for 100, 150 people for $100,000. So you have to, California is much higher. Like you have to see where they're coming from. I've had brides that the bride was from California, but the groom is from here, from Georgia, and they decided to have the wedding in Atlanta because literally it was a quarter of the price. And that's with all the travel that she did for the meetings. That's with sleeping rooms when she had to get hotel rooms. That was a car rentals. She came 6 times in the year that we planned, and it was still cheaper than
Wow.
coming in California. Like her mother was like, when we would get quotes, her mother would call me and she's like, is this it? And I'm like, well, do you want me to add another zero to that? I mean,
I don't mind, of course. Just give me more.
right. I mean, I'm pretty sure the DJ would be very happy to add another zero to that. And honestly, here in Atlanta, she got the top package of everything.
But
Like
average is a very good term. We also have price discussions as photographers, and I'm always asking them, do you really want to have an average wedding? And I mean, the least people want to, because for me, average is something mediocre, something like everybody wants to have the best wedding ever, not average.
No, right. And the best wedding for your budget. That's the thing.
Well,
For best
at
wedding
least.
for what you could afford. So you can't say I want, I want this Meghan Markle wedding, but I only have $5,000.
Tell me, please, can you actually save money as a wedding planner? Can you claim that after all, even paying your check, you might be able to optimize things and really save people's money? Or would it be too much
No, I
to
feel like on
expect?
average, wedding planners, especially if you're seasoned, you can save your clients some money. And how we do that is, one is we have buying power. Like we have a Rolodex of vendors and people that we work with. So they, a lot of times, since we're bringing them business over and over, they'll take really good care of our couples. They'll give them an extra bouquet complimentary, or an extra hors d'oeuvre on their buffet, or a couple of extra hours. They do special things for our
Right,
couples.
these vendors want to please you as well as the
Right,
bride,
right. So
just
they
for you
they
to
take
inquire them once
Right.
more.
So
Right.
they take really good care of our brides. But not only that, I know what to look for. Because I tell them I'm different than many other planners because I worked in the hotel industry for so many years. So I know how to read a catering and a venue contract. And I know what things truly cost. Like I know what it truly costs to put that plate of dinner on front of you. Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes I look at it and I'll tell my couple that is a very fair price. Like that is a very fair price. And sometimes I look at it and I'll go back to my vendor and say, listen, I know you could do a little bit better than this. And then sometimes I'm like, I don't. The biggest way that I help my clients though too is if they hire me for full planning, is in the beginning stages, helping them find the perfect venue and the perfect caterer, and that they're not signing a contract that is based on the number of guests they're inviting. So, perfect example here in the States, most hotels or most catering companies have a food and beverage minimum, right? And the food and beverage minimum is based on what they've deemed to that hotel or that ballroom or that venue to be for that particular Saturday. But they also, a lot of times, if the bride says, oh, we're going to have 200 people, they base that food and beverage on 200 people. And I'm like, but that's not what you're going to have. You're inviting 200 people. Not everybody's going to come.
Mm.
So I said, if we're at 200, let's tell them 150, because you could always go up, you can't go down. Like, you have to do that. So you have to be mindful. So that's a big way. And then just kind of, sometimes they want a peony in September, like we can get it, but that's going to be an $8 flower. Per flower. But how about we show you a rose, a garden rose, which looks exactly the same, doesn't smell the same, but it looks exactly the same. Unless you're a master gardener, you don't know the difference.
Yeah.
So there's ways, and saying, okay, no, you cannot have this, but guess what? Here's an alternative to that. And so that's a good way to save the money. And then sometimes too, I just tell them no because it makes no sense.
Like, for example, can you give us an example? What doesn't usually make sense?
So one time I had a bride that the venue is a gorgeous venue. It's called Callenwald here. And it's a part of the Coca-Cola family, which is based here in Atlanta. And it's a gorgeous, now it's a fine art center, but it used to be a home. It used to be the family's home. And it has this grand staircase. And, it's very European in the sense where the main spaces of the house were created to entertain. Not like the parts where people lived and the rooms are smaller, but the entertaining portion of the house it's big. So this particular bride, the venue has those white garden folding chairs, and she wanted to, and then she got the rented chairs, Shivari chairs, silver chairs for the reception. So at one point, she wanted her mother to get 2 sets of chairs, and I was like, absolutely not. We're gonna spend 25, like, when these white folding chairs for the 20-minute ceremony are perfectly fine. Because literally everyone's sitting on them, they leave, they get folded and put away, and that's it. Like nobody, like that, this area gets cleared out, and then the desserts go there. No one's going to remember the chairs.
Yeah.
They'll spend more time in the reception space. And her mother was like, and she was like, oh yeah, so sometimes like those kind of things don't make sense. Like
Yeah.
just don't do that. Like, well, I have to have, well, the hotel has these chairs. Why do you have to have these chairs? That's not even in your budget anymore. But I always tell them we will revisit it towards the end. And if we invited 200 people and only 125 come, you might have a little bit of money. to be able to upgrade things. But let's get what we have to have first, and then all the extra bells and whistles and sparkly stuff later.
And what do you think? Where else can the bride save money? Because we would like to make our podcast interesting also for the brides. We would like to give some tips. What do you think is also important? For example, is the bouquet or the wedding cake is important for the bride? Because many of them, like what we usually see in Germany, they try to save money on the wedding photographers because they think like it's not that important, and they buy, for example, an expensive wedding cake. But then in the end, many brides, they regret this decision, of course, because like you eat the cake, but the picture is actually going to last with you forever, or for example the video. So
Right.
what do you think, what can they do if, for example, I'm on the budget, but like where can I save the money?
So first thing I say this, I am a huge, huge advocate for all my photographers and videographers, because I tell my couples that is the only thing you have left after the day is over. The cake is consumed, the food is gone, the drinks are gone. Everybody goes back home, back to their, back to their countries and their towns. 6, 8 weeks later, you get this beautiful album or your beautiful gallery and your videos. And that's all you have to last a lifetime. I mean, I've been married 16 years and we watch our wedding video for our anniversary with the kids and they laugh.
Yeah.
But at least it's a memory that we could share with them. We look at our parents' album and some of our family members who've been married 50, 60 years, and it's so beautiful to go back and see, when they had no wrinkles and they had all dark hair, and some family members have passed away, and so you get those memories, and then you get those feelings back again. So I tell couples, because I'll have couples say, well, do you know a photographer that's $1,000 or $2,000? I'm like, no, I don't. Everybody I know is over $4,000 or $5,000, but it's worth it because it's you're capturing a moment in history for your history. So that's one place I tell people, do not be cheap on that situation.
Yeah.
Which all my photographers love me for that. I'm like, I need you. That's one place that you should not skim, because you will regret it. Like you said, you will regret it, because cake is beautiful, but there's ways around cake. Here in the States, we have what they call a dummy cake. And so it's foam, and it looks like a real cake, and there's only one little piece of it that's real for you to cut. And then in the back they have the big slice, the big pieces of cake that they kind of cut up. So that's a way to save money if you feel the need to have this huge cake. That's one way to save
It's
money.
not typical in Germany, but I've seen it a few times, and I've seen it once
So
in England.
beautiful. Yeah,
Right.
it's amazing. Like, I have brides like, well, I want a cake that looks like, 5 tiers. I'm like, well, first of all, you only have 100 people coming. What are you gonna do with 5 tiers of real cake? Like, no one's gonna eat all that. As it is, to a 3-tier cake, there's always a bunch of cake left over because everybody doesn't eat it. Everybody doesn't like cake, especially wedding cake. But the biggest thing is to sit down. I mean, how the best way to do your budget is to sit down and create your guest list first, and then talk as a couple. Talk about what you want on your wedding day. What do you envision on your wedding day? Do you want the ballroom space or the reception space to look like a garden, or do you want an amazing band? Or are you people who love food and drinks, and you want really good food? You want to, I mean, I've had couples that are like, I have to have this photographer and I will do anything I have to do to get this photographer. And I'm like, okay, since we know that, there's other places we need to cut. So you might not have a table full of flowers. You might have one table that's full of candles and one table that has flowers. So, kind of picking and choosing, but you have to figure out what is the most important thing for you that day, and then work from there. But create your guest list. You create your budget first, and then create your guest list. Like, okay, collectively we have 50,000. How many guests can we have for that?
But I'm very sorry to interrupt you. Just a small question on the budget, because I think that the situation is quite paradox, because people, say the wedding couples, have, as you say, to think out the wedding budget and say, okay, we have this and that amount of money, but they have to think it out of nothing because they don't know the cost. So how can they actually fix the sum? I mean, there are some cases when people say, okay, we spend that much because we don't have any more money. That's it,
Right.
of course. But in most cases, or in many cases, people do work, do have some money, and their parents also are eager to help them. And then they have just to think out a certain sum of money, which is which comes out of nothing. Because when you say, like, if you don't know anything about weddings and you come with a sum like 20,000 or 50,000 of whatever, euros, dollars, uh, you cannot have an understanding what this money can buy, because you don't
Right.
know how much the cake costs, how much the photographer costs, how much the location costs, whatever. So I think it's kind of like a circle where you have
It
to
is.
like start at some point. But I don't know. In most cases, I have a very strange feeling that people come with some price expectations which come out of nothing. I don't know if there is a
And I do.
solution here.
Underestimated. They usually think it's going to cost them a
Of
lot more,
course,
and then they're really surprised, like, oh my god, it's like double the budget that they usually actually plan for the wedding.
It happens. Yeah, and what I say with that is, if you have no idea, you know someone who's been married. Like you recently, like find someone in your circle that has recently been married. Have your parents or your mom. I always tell my brides, your mom knows somebody who's had those kind of conversations. And on average, but the other good thing is call up a local wedding planner and say, have a consultation with them and say, you know what, I'm looking at getting married next spring. I have no clue. I had a couple one time that came to me. There was a referral, and we met, and I let them, tell me their story, paint their vision. Like, what are the things that they wanted to see? What are the must-haves? And they're like, we want to be in the city. We want fireworks. We want beautiful decor. And I was like, okay, so after an hour or so, I said, what's your budget? They're like, oh, well, we researched that it was between 35 and 50. And I looked at them and I said, well, what because I took all my notes. I was like, what you just describe to me is anywhere between 100 to 200,000.
Especially with the fireworks, of course. Yeah.
Right, all
It's
that
not
stuff. And
just,
they were
like some wedding blogs, because they usually say like the wedding photographer costs, I don't know, $500. You don't need the makeup artist. I've read some articles about that. Like, really, guys? Like, for real? That's how you can save money on the wedding without having the makeup artist looking like a panda? Because if I do my own makeup, I look like a panda with a circus like that. Yay!
right. I mean, we're seeing that now with all these different newscasters casting from home. Like, you're just like, oh, that makeup does not look good on her. Like, I, I'm doing my own, basic makeup. But if I like when we do big events or I have to do photo shoots, I get somebody to do my own makeup and hair.
of
And
course.
and of course, and I have conversations with other planners because they're like, oh, well, we tell them that they're a bride that they don't wear hair makeup, or they don't do their hair makeup every day. They don't need a makeup artist or hairstylist on their wedding day. And I was like, yes, you do. I said, the photographers need something good. They want you to be flawless. Like so even if it's natural, you need a nice natural face.
That's the point. Some people say, oh, it's not me. And I say, what? But you are not wearing a white dress every day. It's not you as well.
You're not getting married every day, and plus also the photo camera, it takes some of your makeup away. So you do need a little bit extra of the makeup. Of course, it's not going to be you, but yeah, it's just your wedding. You don't
Exactly.
wear also the hair like that every day, you know.
Right. Yeah, you don't get dressed up in this beautiful gown every day. You're not who gets photographed that much on any given day unless you're a celebrity. It's all
You
these
don't
different
spend 50K every day as well. Like, we're
right,
normal people.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when I told couples too, I said, believe me, it'll be less for your photographer to have to edit later if you go ahead and just have a nice base and have your hair done. And I said, and also to find, I said, if you are natural like that, then you look for a hair and makeup artist that has that style. You don't go find somebody that her Instagram has nothing but girls that are like don't look like themselves.
Yeah, like a fashion, maybe beauty looks
Right,
really.
which doesn't fit. I have some brides, here in the States, we call it beat. Like they just have their face beats and they have their eyelashes. And, I have brides that's on average, that's what they look like when they go out. They don't wear it every day, but they love that. And then I have brides that are like, I am a med student. I am a PhD student. I wear lotion on my face and lip gloss, and that's it. And so as a planner, I literally pair my couples up with vendors and professionals that fit them. So not only fit their budget but also fit their needs and their style and who they are, because I want them to be comfortable. And I tell them, with your photographers and your videographers, you have to love them
Of
just
course.
as much as you love me, because they're an extension of who you are for the day. They're an extension of your family. They will be seen more than any other vendor that you have, because typically the florist comes, sets up, and leaves. The cake gets delivered. The food, you might see the servers a little bit, but then that's gone. But your entertainment, so is your DJ, your planner, and your photography, videography team, that you have to love them.
Oh,
Because
for sure. You need to have a team.
they're there.
Yeah.
Let
I'll
me
be
put one. Let me put one point straight about this consultation. So, if somebody is at the starting point, some a couple, and they have no clue, this consultation, this initial questions, is it free, or would you charge already for these basic questions? Because for us, usually we do the first consultation. Photographers do very often for free, because you need to know your client, and there has to be some kind of question answer session, just to make sure that you fit together, and you give some information for free.
Yes, for us, our first consultation is complimentary, and typically is anywhere from 30 minutes to about 45 minutes,
Right.
and it's on the phone. We've given the option of Atlanta. There's a lot of traffic here, so we give everybody the option of you can meet us in our office in the Midtown area, or we could do a phone call, or we could do a video call.
Okay.
Many of our clients, the initial call it's a phone call, and we talk for 20, 30 minutes. I get to know who they are, what they've booked already, if they've booked anything, how you heard about us, tell me your story, all that good stuff. And where the education part comes in, or the tips part comes in, is when we get to the end, which is when we start discussing budget and the contract and that process. And that's when I step in and I say, okay, according to what what you just described for me, but is there wiggle room with that budget? I always say, is there wiggle room? My favorites are the ones that go, I don't have a budget, or the dad is like, oh, there's no budget. I'm like, everyone has one, whether
Sure.
it's a $500,000 budget or a $50,000 budget. Even my brides who dad said, oh no, there's not a budget. We haven't set a budget. So if dad is at the meeting, I go, okay, dad, so are you okay with 300,000? And I said, okay, how about 200,000? Oh, I could do 200,000, or I could do, everybody has their threshold. But I always tell my couples, we'll have a set budget of, we'll figure out a set budget for you. But I always say, let's plan for 3 to 5% over, because things happen. And my goal as your full planner, if I'm your full planner, is to make sure we don't get to that top, to that extra miscellaneous 5%, but it's there just in case. And it's, whether it's a tent, because we need a tent, and if we're outdoors, or more people said yes than no for coming, it's always good to have a good range. But yeah, for us, it's always an eye opener for conversations, because they're like, oh yeah, I guess I need more money, don't I? I had a bride that was going to do 100. She hired us for full planning, and it was going to be about 100, 125, and her budget was about 80 to 100. We're like, okay, that's doable. Found a great location, it was doable. Then they put together the final guest list before we started sending out save the dates, it was at 298 invited guests. And that's when we had to have another conversation. Like, I'm good, I'm just not that good. So
You're not a magician, of course, just squeezing.
I can magically make plates appear and chairs appear, and so we increased the budget. And that wedding, it went over what we initially said it, because out of the 298 guests, only 223 said yes. I have never had that many people say yes. And it was, it was an amazing thing. But she knew the more guests meant more tables, more seats, more plates, so that it increases that. And I tell Bryce too, I'm like, you have to think of, for every guest is a cost. For every guest is a cost, because there's linens, there's tables, there's chairs. Yeah.
Of course, and how much usually does it cost in US for one guest in Atlanta?
Anywhere from $150 to $500 per person when you break down the entire budget. That way, and at most hotels and most larger venues, it's $100 to $150, $200 per person just for the meal. And just
I have an impression, since we are talking about the budgets, that the budgets in the States, on average, sorry about about
I know.
mentioning it this way, are a bit higher than in Germany.
I
Mhm.
think
And
actually
I
a little
also have a theory, and I just wanted to check it with you.
Okay.
My theory is that in Germany, more couples, or there are many couples who marry a little bit later. I
Hmm.
know that me and Alexa, we have a little bit different couples. Her ones are a bit younger and mine are older. So that's why I have an impression, and I just want to double check it. So especially couples who are already in their 30s or after, they usually pay their wedding by themselves. And they're at the beginning of their careers, if they are like in the beginning of 30s. And of course, they are limited. As in the States, the many or much more weddings are paid by the parents. And I guess this is the answer why usually weddings have higher budgets. I would judge it on photographers' budgets because, for example, if you mention 5,000 euros, comparable would be in Germany $5,000. In Germany, it would be 5,000 euros. And from what I know, there are very few photographers who charge that much. Normally, it would be a little bit less. There are some photographers in this price range, but not that many as in the States. In the States, I even know some colleagues who would charge 10K plus.
Hmm.
And in Germany, I virtually know nobody who would be in the 5-digit area. So could you confirm that my theory that it's just because that the parents are involved in most cases where you have a higher budget?
I feel so. I feel that's true, but also it all depends on their careers because I've had it where, it comes in waves here in the States that I've seen in the last 12, 13 years. We had a wave where it was younger couples getting married. They get married right out of college. They have nothing. I mean, they just get married out of college. Is very common in the South, especially to get married right after you've had your bachelor's degree. So you're in your early 20s, so 23 to 25, 26, you get married, your parents assist you with the wedding. That's normal. Also, traditionally, in years past, the parents of the bride pay for everything and, pay for the wedding itself. And then the groom's parents pay for like the ring and the honeymoon, the rehearsal dinner, that kind of thing. But then it kind of switched, when we've had different economic issues here in the States where more and more couples were starting to pay the wedding themselves. And I noticed that they're a little bit more conscious, they're a little bit conscientious when it's like, what's my money? Because it's their money out of their pocket.
Right.
But then we have older couples who are in their mid to late 30s into 40s who are paying it themselves. And they have good savings, they have good jobs at this point, and they put on a great wedding. But they make wiser decisions as to where to put their wedding, like put their money. They also make wiser decisions on how many guests to invite and how many people to have in their bridal party. It's a little bit more where when they're younger, whether it's their money or it's not their money, they don't know how to say no. Like they can't say no, so they invite everybody. They'll have 12 bridesmaids because they can't say no to their girlfriends, and because that, and they're not the ones, like you said, they're not the ones paying for it. It's mom and dad paying for it most of the time. They contribute to it, and then when they're older, it's more meaningful. They've waited longer to get married. So they have, smaller weddings, 50 to 100 guests, and they're beautiful, and they put their money for the photographer, for the entertainment. It's more thought out, still very meaningful. And then you'll have the people there in between where it's the bride's parents and the bride's parents and the groom's parents are both, everyone's contributing and helping. So it's multiple. So the bride and groom contributing, the parents contributing. So it helps burden lift the burden off of everybody. That's kind of how it was for our wedding when we got married all these years ago. Our families helped because we were out of college a few years, and his family, my husband's family helped, my family helped, and then we added to it. So it was like a family affair.
My question is, you've mentioned a few times the social media, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. You are already quite a long time in the business. Can you say how internet and social media perhaps has influenced and has changed your business? I guess from one side, couples have much better possibilities now to research on themselves and to hire the vendors by themselves. From one side, perhaps they would have less demand sometimes for a planner. On the other hand, you can organize things differently, you can advertise differently. So could you say a few words about that?
Yeah, so when I first started my business almost 8 years ago, Instagram wasn't even, I don't even think Instagram was around. It might have just been starting, but it was mostly Facebook. And at that time, we were not using Facebook for advertising. We were not. It was just kind of what it was built to be, was a social platform to connect with your family and friends. I mean, that's what it was built for, right? And so it was kind of like, hey, this is what I'm doing now. You kind of just give people a day to day of what you were doing, what you were up to. Over the years, more and more features got added, and things got added. And so in the beginning of my business, my advertising, of course, when you first start your business, unless you have a savings that you could put towards starting a business, a lot of us don't do that. We just like, okay, I'm going to go start this business, and you just figure it out along the way. And my advertising was really my referrals, because I had such a great relationship with so many vendors and venues in town. And when I just kind of let them know I'd made my rounds. I did site visits, meaning I went to go visit the different venues, had lunch with a lot of my vendor friends, letting them know like I am open for business. That was my marketing. But over the last 3 or 4 years, about 4 years ago, my first thing that I outsourced was social media, because I realized about 4 or 5 years ago that what we do as the wedding industry is very visual. So it's like a calling card. Like it's what we do is very visual. So for those who are out there who ignore their social media pages, don't, because most of my couples, if they're in that millennial bracket, if they're in the younger bracket of brides and grooms, they use social media just as much as they use Google. I think they go to Instagram first. To Instagram. I mean, I've seen it. I've been in a consultation with a couple, and I mentioned a photographer, and the first thing, okay, what's his handle? And they look it up. So we started that was the first thing I outsourced, because as a consumer, as a regular person, social media is fun. But as a business owner, I recognized that I needed a strategy behind it. And I also needed to showcase my best work, because many of us, especially planners, many of us have these beautiful photos that come in, have these beautiful weddings, but we're so busy servicing our clients that we forget to post them. We forget to talk about our business. We forget to do all that. So I feel like it's very important, because and it's not style shoots. Here in the States, we do something called, we have style shoots where you work with photographers and you set up this. No, I like to have real weddings with real couples that look like the couples that we're trying to service anyway. So very important for us to have that. And with that, a great website, because that's the idea. They see you on social media, they click on your website, and then they see all your other work on your website, and then they inquire about your services. Or, depending on their age bracket, I'll get DMs, and they'll say, hey, I love your work. I love this. Or my couples are posting their weddings on their pages and tagging me. And then I'll get a message from somebody. I'm like, oh, you did Candace's wedding at Ashton Gardens. I'm getting married there. Can we talk? So, I've seen it. I've seen the work. It's an investment. I tell you, that's the one area that we will never give up. Even during this times that we're in now, we still have our social media manager team that just handles all of that.
So have a special person even to handle that. That's a cool idea. Okay.
And would you say that social media is the main marketing channel for you? Or what's the main, your website, social media, Instagram, referrals?
Instagram is our main channel. And then we have, we advertise with our local media people, our local wedding magazines, for the connections and, and just the connections there and the collaborations. But our main focus is our Instagram, and then our website, because of course that pushes them, our Instagram pushes them to our website. And so back in April, we relaunched our new website and our new brand, and it kind of all fits together. So our social media looks like our website. When you look at my website, the social media, see photos of my team and I, it's who we are. It's us on, what you see on the screen is what you see when you walk in the office.
And do you do any paid advertisement for Instagram or Facebook?
I've done for Facebook, and we've done for Instagram when we're hosting different events. But now since we started doing micro, like smaller weddings, and we have new services that we are promoting, we're going to start doing some Facebook and Instagram ads and see how that goes. We did really well with Facebook ads when we had hosting events or and advertising that way. I haven't done it fully for Instagram yet because it's always changing. So we're always learning something new.
Exactly,
Right.
especially social media. I feel like it's changing every single month. For example, for me, the hashtags, they used to work just a couple of months ago. Now I put several hashtags under my post, it just doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
It's like, yeah, I find it's really amazing that you could outsource some of your work because
Mhm.
you just cannot do all the things
And
yourself.
it's refreshing the hashtags and then investigating hashtags. Like right now, here in the States, we're going to much smaller weddings, more micro weddings, more intimate weddings. And when I knew that that was a new service that we were going to be promoting for the time period that we're in now, I told my social media team, like, this is what I'm working on. I need you to do research on what's happening right now, these micro weddings, intimate weddings, elopements, whatever the whatever's trending now. And they came up with a list of 30 things for us to use now, and we're using those behind it. And then, I also coach and teach, so that's a whole nother set of hashtags that we use. But yeah, it's I was thinking like, oh, you just hashtag away. There's a method to it all. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you spotted any other trends over the recent years besides elopements, what you've mentioned?
I think the biggest trend that I've seen more and more is that couples are just getting creative, like just the creativity and having something that is uniquely theirs. My favorite couples are the couples that are like, we're getting married in like October, November, but before they get married, they've gone to 4 weddings. They've gone to like their friends' weddings, or they've been in a few weddings. And after every wedding, I get a phone call like, well, I saw this and I did not like that. So let's not do that. I saw this and I really like that. How can we make that different? But I think, the word trend is, people say it all the time. And to me, a wedding is classic, right? To me, you make your own trend. Like, there's some things that we copy. The one trend I'm happy that's gone in a way is the burlap. I know here in the States, we have burlap everywhere, that fabric that's crazy. That's gone. But I think more and more couples are not necessarily following a trend, but really following their hearts and who they are personally. Right.
Right.
And then, brides will they go on Pinterest and they pin like crazy. And I'll say to them, well, what about this photo do you like? That's my designer and I sit down and goes, you pin this photo. What do you love? And sometimes it's literally one flower out of the entire bouquet that they love. Because that's how women are, right? I love her earrings, not the whole outfit, just the earrings. Or I love that fork and knife on the table. And so it's kind of pulling those things out and making it their own personal trend. Like, that's what the best trends are for me.
Right. I haven't even noticed the time running.
Me either. You
We've
fine.
run out of it. Irene, thanks so much for
Yeah.
sharing the insights.
I had a good time.